And so this is where the BACT, the Business Agroecology Criteria Tool, comes into play. It's a tool that is designed to assess the degree to which enterprises are aligned with each of the 13 principles of agroecology. And we can see those principles in the diagram to the right, and also to assess how aligned they are with the three major operational principles of sustainable food systems, which are strengthening resilience, securing social equity, and improving resource efficiency. So this tool fills the need to be able to not only take into account the financial potential of an enterprise, but also their environmental and social impacts. And the tool also has some results that allow to predict what the sustainable, what the scaling possibilities for that enterprise are in terms of scaling its impact on the food system. And we'll have a bit of a more detailed look at that a little bit later. So who is the BACT for? As Nancy mentioned in the beginning, it's for several groups of actors. It's for investors and donors to inform their decision-making when selecting enterprises in which they want to invest, but basing those decisions not just, again, on financial return, but basing them also on the environmental and social aspects that are so important within a larger agroecology and food systems framework. So it allows for holistic decision-making. It's also a tool that's useful for enterprises. It can be used for measuring their own performance against the different principles of agroecology, and that can help them identify where there is room for improvement. And the tool is also designed in a way where the results can be used for communications. So it can be really useful to communicate on your alignment with agroecology, how well an enterprise might contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the tool generates some nice visualizations that can also be used for communications purposes. And lastly, the tool is also a resource for civil society and for policymakers to help them learn about what agroecology in practice and business can look like. And it can also be used to survey enterprises to understand what maybe some capacity gaps are and inform supporting projects or supporting initiatives that they want to provide. So how do you use the tool? It's very simple. We'll go through a demo later, but it's available online. It's a spreadsheet-based tool on Google Sheets. All you have to do is access the tool through a link that we will see. You download a copy of that, and then you can start filling it in. This is the InfoPool website. Biovision has created this as a resource website with lots of studies, other resources, and tools. So to access the tool, you go to the website, you hover over tools, and then in the drop-down menu, click on Agroecology Criteria Tool. Business Agroecology Criteria Tool, the BACT. Once you're here, you can download a user guide, which will look like this and provide some more guidance on how to use the tool, how to interpret some of the concepts, and what you can expect to get back. So this is available for further information. And how you use it is you click on Get Started with the BACT. So I click on this here. And then what opens up is the tool. Now, as we mentioned before, in order for you to start using it, you have to make a copy. As of now, this is the master file and it's locked. This is the way that we have decided to make it publicly available and to share it. There's the master file, but the master file cannot be edited. So you have to make a copy. So we'll just write demonstration. You have to make a copy, and then the tool is usable. And of course, as was mentioned, the prerequisite here is that you have to have a Gmail account. Hopefully, that won't be a barrier for most people. So I'll just come to this version of the tool here. Here we go. Here we are. So I've already started filling in this one, but it's the same thing. So we can have a look at it together. When you land on the Welcome tab, here you are. and you are directed to then have a look at the Instructions tab, which follows here. In the Instructions tab, we have the objectives of the tool, which we mentioned during the presentation, making it easy for entrepreneurs and financiers to assess an enterprise through the lens of agroecology. That's really the overarching goal of the tool. And then instructions for how to use the tool. It's recommended that you collect a lot of the information before so that you have it in one place. Make a separate copy, a personal copy, which we've just done. And then we can see below for the flow of how to go through the B-Act, and then we fill out the assessment. One thing that's really important here when filling out the assessment is to not leave any questions blank. In order for the results to be returned accurately and to get accurate results, you have to fill it out thoroughly. So we start one with the about the enterprise. And maybe this will also connect to the question that came up by Malvern here about the definition of an enterprise. Here, there's no request for a registration number or for any sort of legal or formal document testifying that it is an actual enterprise. The information is very basic. You can fill in the name, the year that it was created. If it has a website, you can add the website link. I will increase the size just so it's a bit more visible. Specify the period that is being reported on. Then the size of the enterprise with assets, profit, net profit, the number of employees, full-time and part-time. And here, also, this might in part respond to the question that came up a bit earlier about possibly crossing some of the red lines and maybe using chemical fertilizers, for example. Here, the enterprise can specify what its vision is, what its mission statement or core objectives are, and maybe where it's trying to go to. So not necessarily just where things, operations stand today, but the direction that it is trying to move in, because that is equally important. Also, the key beneficiaries. So, who are the customers, or who are the people in society that are being targeted here, or what is the general benefit that is trying to create possibly for the environment? So that can be specified here. Any certifications, listing the goods and services that it provides, where it is based, where are the places of operation, and then also where it falls within the value chain. So there were some questions that came up about the tool being usable for enterprises at different stages of the value chain. It is very much designed for that. Here, you see we have several different roles within the value chain, from agricultural production to processing, packaging, storage, and several more as well. And here you can list what the direct activities are based on what we just saw, those different roles, and who are the key groups that it is catering to: consumers, civil society, farmers, and what is the scale of operations. And you have some information over here to help you figure out what the scale is according to the tool. And then we also have what we call the enabling activities. So recognizing that an enterprise can do multiple things and can have its core operations, but then can also play other roles within the value chain and within food systems, which could be training and education provided maybe upstream to farmers, research and development, providing financing services, participating in policy processes and trying to advocate for policy change. All of these are also really important roles to play within a food system, and this tool allows for an enterprise to note these down. So maybe for the sake of the demonstration, we can imagine that the enterprise that is filling this out would be a fruit juice maker. So at the stage of processing, and we make various fruit juices. So here we can select food processing as the role, and the key group that it caters to are consumers. It also engages in its own packaging. So it also has packaging as a direct activity. And then in the enabling activities, we could say that in addition to producing juice and processing the fruit, it also engages directly with its suppliers, with specific farmers, and it provides training and education to them to help them meet certain production standards, certain environmental protection standards, and organizes trainings, possibly even provide some equipment to those farmers so that they produce very environmentally friendly juices. And that can be captured here as well. And you see that there are up to 5 different activities, either direct and enabling, that can be added in this about the enterprise sheet. So this is the very introductory one where you just fill in basic information about the enterprise. And then we come to what I consider the core of the B Act, which are the principal questions. So this might look familiar. This is the picture that we saw on the slide of the presentation. We have here in this column the principles. So we have recycling, input reduction, soil health, animal health, biodiversity, synergy, economic diversification, social values and diets, and so forth. So just by looking at these, I think you can tell that a lot of them relate directly to production. And we have over here in these 2 columns the question response fields for direct and for indirect. And again, these are really important concepts for the tool. When an enterprise is going to respond to a question that is under the direct column, that means that they perform that activity directly themselves. It is a part of their core operations. And then indirect would mean that they're not necessarily performing the activity themselves directly, but rather they can put in place incentives, or they can put in place support mechanisms to have other actors within the value chain perform those activities. And maybe going along with this example of being a fruit juice maker, we'll see what that could look like. So what I propose is that we maybe go through answering the questions for 3 different principles here to see what it would look like. Now, again, I just came up with the fruit juice maker. It's a fictional enterprise. It's not real, so this information is not extremely detailed, but for the sake of the demonstration, I think it will be useful to see how the tool is used. So we can start with the recycling principle. How would we respond to this? Do you substitute synthetic fertilizers with alternative soil inputs? As we are a fruit juice processor, we don't engage in agriculture directly. So that's when you would, with the direct question, you would select not applicable, NA. However, in the farmer training programs that we are providing to our suppliers, we are encouraging them to substitute synthetic fertilizers with locally available bio inputs, or manure, or other forms of organic fertilizers. And we're supporting them technically in doing this. So here we could select yes. Then the following question, do you make use of green manure, such as cover crops or other plants that decompose and enrich the soil? And you see here in the column in between the principle and the answer fields, we have examples. So this can also give some ideas about what this might look like in practice. And just on that note, if you look at the,
Hans,
yes?
Hans, are you able to maximize your screen? I don't have a problem seeing it, but there are
Sure.
people who are saying that you can maximize it further.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes, good. Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully the text is legible and visible for everyone now. So here we have a question about green manure. Similarly to before, as a fruit juice maker, we don't do agriculture, so we select not applicable for the direct. However, we do have a farmer training program. We work with our suppliers. We want them to produce organic juices, and we want them to use other ways of enriching the soil. We might promote the use of cover crops and leguminous plants. So here we can then select yes. Then do you recycle wastewater for agricultural or other uses? So here we use a lot of water in the production process. However, we might not yet have gotten the equipment that helps us recycle that wastewater. We haven't set up a closed loop system in our our fruit juice processing plant yet, so we indicate no. We'll be very honest, but we might have the intentions of doing so. For another question, do you use energy derived from biomass residues? Well, we are in a municipality where there is no access to biomass residues. So in this case, we could say either no, or we could say not applicable, depending on whether it's just simply not feasible where we are. And that's at the discretion of the user to determine. And I think this is an important principle. The tool is not supposed to punish for what we have not done or what we're not doing yet. It's really at the discretion of the user, whether that be the investor or the enterprise surveying themselves, to determine whether something is feasible or not. So those are some of the questions for the recycling principle. I propose that we have a look at another one of the principles. Let's go down and look for economic diversification. So here we have economic diversification principle with a few questions. Again, there are some examples next to the questions to help the user better understand what each question is asking for. And so the first question is, do you take steps to ensure greater systemic resilience of agroecosystems to extreme weather events or other disturbances? In terms of where we stand in the value chain, we don't do agriculture, so we cannot respond to that directly. We don't have any operations that directly relate to this, so we select not applicable. But for the indirect, we do work with suppliers who are doing agriculture, who have fruit orchards, and as a part of our farmer training programs, we might be supporting them to establish more climate resilient orchards. We might be supporting them to have windbreaks, to have better water retention on their land, to reduce runoff by setting up dikes, for example, and to better be able to withstand various extreme weather events. So let's say that's a part of our farmer training program, so we will select yes. For the next question, do you take steps to ensure greater livelihood resilience to stress and shocks, such as economic shocks, weather shocks, by offering diversified income, production, and access to the market? Here, this would directly apply, of course, to our own workers. Are we affording our own workers resilience vis-a-vis different economic shocks? Let's say that it's something that we are thinking very much about. If there is a drought in the region that we work in, or if there is another shock that makes it so we can't get the quantity or the type of fruits that we usually use, are we still able to provide employment for our workers? Let's say here that we are thinking actively about how to do so, but we haven't managed to do this yet. And then indirectly, are we doing this for our suppliers? And we could say here possibly yes, because we're encouraging our suppliers to have very diverse orchards or diverse farms, to not just grow maybe mangoes, but possibly also grow citrus fruit, and to grow papaya fruit, and to grow passion fruit. That way, if there's one of our products, one of our juices that for some reason we have an issue with, we sell less of, there's less of a market for it, there are other juices. So through economic diversification, we are supporting also our farmer suppliers. So those are some questions for the economic diversification. I hope that gives a bit of an idea of what the sort of this part of the tool looks like. And then lastly, we can go to one more principle before then turning to the results: fairness. Here, the first question is, do you work on increasing organizational capacities of farmer communities and other local food system actors? As we are not a producer, we put not applicable for ourselves, and in the scoring, that won't deduct any points. Indirectly, we do work with farming communities and other local food systems actors. So if we are involved in increasing organizational capacities, perhaps, we work specifically with a cooperative of farmers in a certain municipality, and we have provided different types of support to that cooperative, we could say that we are. This can also extend to other types of organizational capacity, whether it's advocacy related, training related, financially related. This is, of course, up to the interpretation and to be connected to the use case, the real case of the user. Maybe we'll take one more question before moving on to the results. One more question under fairness. Does your enterprise hire rural youth, or does it support the creation of decent jobs for youth in the food and agriculture sector by actively participating in policymaking? So for us, we can say that we are based in a city, and we are not that close to the areas of production, although we're in the same municipality, but there might be some distance, so we could assess based on our geographic location whether this applies to us or not. We might select not applicable. However, maybe we know that the suppliers that we're working with have the opportunity to specifically make a point of hiring youth, rural youth, and maybe that's a requirement that we have, or maybe that this is something that we want to incentivize or to encourage. And in this case, we'll say we haven't yet done so, but we're thinking about how it is that we can encourage our suppliers to hire more rural youth. And it continues all the way through the 13 principles. So I hope this gives an idea of the types of questions that you encounter, how you respond to the questions, how you relate it to where you stand in the value chain directly, and also how an enterprise can influence other stages of the value chain through its indirect activities. Now, we come to the screening questions, which we've brought up a couple times now. So here they are. If any of the red lines are crossed, you would just select it here, and then this will appear later in the scorecard. As it was pointed out in one of the comments, if you download this tool and you use it offline in Excel, unfortunately, these red lines will not be clickable. So this is one of the technical challenges that the tool currently has, technical limitations, better said. So as of now, it's still a web-based tool. So let's say that our enterprise does not cross any of these red lines. Now we move lastly to the impact questions. As we had mentioned, these impact questions collect quantitative information about the social, economic, and environmental impact, including carbon footprint, carbon sequestration, water use, soil health, biodiversity, number of jobs created, and so forward. So this information does not have to be provided. It's optional. Again, this will only appear in what we call the financier scorecard. So that's the most comprehensive sheet of results that this tool can generate. And we think that this information is often what impact investors are looking for. But for the use of enterprises and possibly for the use of certain accelerator programs, incubators, or other types of investors, donors, they might not request this information. But we added this sheet so you have the possibility of capturing it, and also a series of questions here to capture the positive systemic impact, so impact on the broader food system, also possible negative impacts on the system, and then the potential for expansion, so scaling up, scaling out, scaling deep. And you'll find across the tool that there are often definitions to help you understand what is meant by the different types of responses. There will also be a rubric at the bottom of the impact questions to help you understand which response might best apply to you or to your enterprise for each of the questions. And that's something I could have mentioned earlier. At the very end of this tool, you'll also find a glossary. And so this provides a bit of a conceptual definition of each of the principles, also some of these other areas that are being measured, to just help you be familiar with all of the different concepts that are coming up in the tool. So now to come to the scorecard, what you get once you've completed the tool. I'll zoom out a little bit so you can see it a bit better here. Hopefully it's still big enough for all to see. Based on the responses that we provided, and again, I took some time beforehand to fill out all of the responses. You need to complete the tool thoroughly to get an accurate result. Our score comes out to about 69%. And I think it's really important that I mention here that this score shouldn't carry any judgment. And that's why we did not define a threshold at which point an enterprise is or is no longer agroecological. Really, it's for the use of the user, how the user wants to make use of it, to track continuous improvement, to pinpoint capacity gaps where support can be provided, or just amongst a pool of enterprises to compare and just to see which percentages, which scores are those that they want to pay most attention to. So this is the score, and also to say there is probably no enterprise that would get a perfect score. You know, there are always areas where improvement can be made, and it's a very, as you saw, extensive list of questions that try and capture um, plenty and plenty of different facets of agroecology. So if an enterprise ever somehow had 100%, I think we would all have a lot that we could learn from them. But I doubt that we would find such an enterprise. And then below here we have the tree diagram. So again, the three operational principles for sustainable food systems you can see are represented here. And within each of those, we have the different agroecological principles. And so we'll get scores for each of those. And those will appear here. This is the tree diagram, and this is also a way of neatly visualizing the performance of an enterprise that can be used again for communications. And below we have a breakdown, which provides some of the same information, but in a different form, and it's visualized a bit differently here with the bars. So again, we have all of the principles, we have the different areas of sustainable food systems, and our scores for each of those. And also, just to understand how certain scores were generated and what they represent, we have a column that informs the user of the percentage of questions that were responded not applicable, because again, those get taken out of the equation that generates the percentages. And if it's of interest, you can also generate a visualization that looks like this at the end. So there's the possibility within the tool to download a diagram that looks just like this, that shows how you're doing in each of the three areas, and with all of the 13 different principles. So that's another way of visualizing the results that can be useful for communications and can be useful for the enterprises. And then, as we saw also in the presentation, we have a visualization of how much enterprises contribute to each of the SDGs. That's what this looks like based on the responses that we provided. And then suggestions for where agroecological improvement can be made based on the three principles that received the lowest scores. So here it's co-creation of knowledge, social values and diets, and biodiversity, with some pointers on maybe which direction we could go in to do this. Then based on the screening questions, no red flags, emerged here. And then based on the responses given in the impact questions, this is sort of the grade that we get on our potential to make systemic impact. It's positive, as you can see. In the middle would be neutral, and here we're more on the positive side. And again, you know, this is not a numerical score because there's no exact science to this, but it's to say that there are indications that there is potential to make change at a broader food systems level. And here also potential for expanding impact. So what is the possibility for expanding this impact through a couple different means that are specified in the impact questions? And this is useful possibly for the investors on the financier side. They want to know that this can be scaled. And at the end, we have room for comments. And maybe I'll just close by coming back to this point on the possibility to specify add comments throughout most of the tool. When we come back to the principal questions, you Let's see here. It wouldn't be here. At the end here in the scorecard is where comments can be provided that might want to contextualize some of the results. Maybe there were some pieces of information that were not captured that they want to specify here. So there's always the ability to bring in that extra contextual information to help the user or the person that will read the results better understand. So this was a quick demonstration, but I hope that it gives you a much clearer idea of how the tool looks, how it can be used in practice when you're sitting at a specific place within the value chain, whether that's at the production level or at the processing level or at another stage in the value chain. And that you now also can see the results that it generates, the visuals that can be used, and how it can also be used as a reference and as a tool for measuring improvement and making changes within the enterprise.